order. It's good to have a group here today, so welcome to everybody. I'll go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Heather, will you lead us?
Oh, sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will start today with our consent agenda. Did anyone have any discussion or possible action on the minutes from the 3 meetings we had in August, which is more than our normal? I had to look at that twice. We really did have 3 meetings. Any changes to that?
Maybe not.
Maybe that's.
All right. And then we will go ahead and jump in. Jennifer, you'll go ahead and start off.
Yes. Okay, starting on page 7 is the summary for the activity plan for August. You can see there's over $92,000 in outstanding encumbrances, so we're busy in the business office. And pages 8 through 13 are just the breakdown of each activity fund. Are there any questions over any of that? Then on page 14, we'll start with the general fund revenue. And just a little side note, in some COSA training that I attended, the budget that we approve shouldn't be approved until after the county excise board approves our estimate of needs. So instead of doing that in October like normal, we've put it off a month. So you'll get the preliminary budget next month, and then we'll be able to approve in November after they approve it. Okay, so we'll just start with the district sources. Taxes are down $1,964. We expected that after last year because the deadlines all got moved and we were taking in extra revenue at this time. Earnings interest are down $2,705. The next 3, reimbursement, other local, and general fund refund, are down $676. And child nutrition is down $1,525. So that brings the total district sources down $6,871. And the intermediate county formula is down $2,316. Mortgage taxes up $1,317. So that total is down $999 from last year. State gross production is up $2,772. Motor vehicle is up $21,364. School land is down $19,662. Our foundation and incentive, state aid, is up $87,773. FBA is down $2,974. And then textbooks is up $70,645 from last year, and they are doing that in one lump payment now. So that is what we will receive for the year, that $151,000. So the total state revenues are up $159,919 from last year.
What is the reason for textbooks up 70,000? We're getting it in one lump sum, but last year was 80-some thousand or something. Did they increase that? That was an increase?
Yes, they just increased the allocations, yes.
At the state level.
At the state level, yes.
And that can be used for electronic curriculum, and maybe that's a dumb question, but that's...
No, that's not a good question.
Okay.
Yes, it can.
Yes.
Okay.
It can be used for Chromebooks.
Okay.
Okay, page 15 is the federal collections, and the 4,200 category. The collections are up $170,856 from last year, and that is where we have claimed the money that was spent last year, but it came in this year. So that's all last year expenses. MeChip is up $5,271, and that just really depends on how quickly they pay the claims, if that stays equal or not. And then federal child nutrition is down $137,189. So last year at this time, we had collected May, June, and July for the summer months, and this year we collected May already, and then this payment is just June, so we're still waiting on July's. The total federal revenue is up $39,938, which brings the grand total revenue up $191,986 from what we were last year. Questions about any of that? Okay. Starting on page 16 are the encumbrances for approval. I think most of them have pretty good descriptions. So did you guys have any questions on any of those?
On number 254 and 255, it says those are high school student supplies. Is that part of what we agreed to pay that will be
Yes.
covered by COVID funds?
Yes.
Okay.
So we
great.
spent a total, the high school was a little different because they can't buy the prepackaged things that are all nice and neat. So we ended up buying from several different vendors just to get the best pricing and that they had in stock. But we've spent a total for high school supplies, $16,695 from the federal funds.
What was the elementary?
The elementary was $64,000.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, I do have
Nope.
another question, sorry. On 289, the intercom system, have they started yet?
They have started. So the staging area is kind of the back area of the stage. That's where they're putting everything. And so they started in the high school first just because of that, but they are pulling all the wire, putting all the new in. I'm not sure how far they've gotten in the high school, but they've been here since last Tuesday, working.
Great.
Yep.
I had one more question, sorry, I had a lot of questions.
Okay.
On 334, Team Fits Graphics, looks like field runner flags and breakaway banner. I'm guessing that's what's used in football. Is that covered by football funds, or is that something that's for all of athletics?
We're buying, that's out of general fund.
Okay,
So the breakaway thing, the kids run through that the cheerleaders hold up is just trash. It's just, it won't stay together and it's not good. So we needed one of those. I'm unhappy with looking at those yellowy looking white flags that we use for touchdowns. So I told them to buy new ones. So that's.
I hope to see those wide.
It was a Palmer kid.
Yeah, years ago.
I have a question on 308, and maybe it's just because I'm new here, the softball windows in the coach's office, what is that?
So the softball concession stand and office needed new windows. So we purchased those windows at Home Depot. And then we also needed in the new metal building that was constructed last year, the softball coach did not have an office. And so there was an area in there that was pretty easy just to add a wall and make her an office in there. So we contracted with LH Construction to come out and install the windows and then put up that wall.
Okay, we did just fill you in. We did kind of a remodel, a light remodel on the press box and the concession stand at the baseball side. There was a lot of work that needed to be done, particularly with the air conditioners didn't work well in either space for the softball, and they couldn't see out of they literally couldn't see out of those windows. They were the kind that have the glass and they were cracked and is bad, you know. So that's all new, I think. Do we have any softball parents in here? No, well, they'd be happy if they were.
They're at the game.
Yeah, they're out there.
The fencing for the STEM building, is that behind to the east and to the south, I guess, of that? Or do we have
So
something?
one of our patrons about right after I got here, asked me about the fact that, so that fence is on our side and it's grown up into, it's got all kinds of stuff in it. And I forgot about it. And patron didn't come back. And then one night I saw him and I said, oh. And so we got that taken care of. But it's a mess. It's just a mess. But it'll look nice now.
That's good.
Any other questions?
365, Vex Robotics, STEM robotic parts, is that, that's just,
That's just district-wide
Okay.
for the robotics and STEM. Mhm.
okay, thank you.
Anything else? On page 22 is the function summary report for the general fund. Since we don't have our estimate of needs yet, we still have that temporary appropriation amount down at the bottom. But so far this year, we have spent 39% of that amount. Last year, we were at 42% at this time, so we are 3% less this year in expenditures. Questions about any of that? Page 23 is the function summary report for the building fund. And that appropriated amount is also our estimate of needs amount from last year. And then nothing else has changed from last month, so the balance is the same. Next is the bond fund. That appropriated amount is the carryover. And then we did make a payment on one of our bonds, and so the balance, it's the same as last month, because last month it was encumbered and now it's spent, but the balance is the $153,678. And then the next page is the sinking fund. We deposited $4,879 in ad valorem tax, and so the balance is up by that amount from last month. And then you have 3 activity fund fundraiser expense requests. Softball would like to do a family fun night to help purchase equipment and uniforms. John Arthur, the athletic director, has physicals, and he would like to spend that money on some different things this year, some software that he hasn't purchased before, so he's just adding those expenses. And then Krista McCann, the art teacher, has added a fundraiser for Art Club. Questions?
Yeah, a quick question on the, and Adam, you may know. So can you tell us a little bit about the baseline, the concussion software? I mean, are you familiar with it?
You know, I'm not familiar with that. I know Kyle's been tracking it, you know, just with Excel spreadsheets and stuff right now, but
Okay.
I think this probably allows him to keep more historical data on kids so we can kind of from year to year
Okay,
and,
so
and
this-
access that more readily, I think. So
Okay, so it's not a like on-field test or something like that?
I'm
It's-
not aware of that. I don't think so, but I'm not quite sure about that.
Any other questions?
Move approval item 3A through D.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Jagger,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Pettit,
Yes.
Wallstaff.
Yes.
All right, we will move on to item number 4. We have a presentation and discussion by Andy Puget on laws relating to Bethany Public Schools. Thank you for being here tonight.
You're welcome. Would you be disappointed if I didn't have a presentation?
It's been so long,
You're here to just answer any
to see
and
you
all
Monday,
questions
then.
we have.
Yeah, I know. I used to look forward to this. Well, most of the time I did. No, that's not true. That's not true. No, you know, it's obviously extremely challenging times for you guys, and I'm wearing a mask both for my protection and yours. I've had 3 very close calls in the last 2 weeks. I'm not, you know, not here in violation of any law or regulation, I can assure you of that, but I've taken 2 tests in the last 3 weeks and passed both of them, but it's, my law partner is currently isolating at home because she's positive, and that was the last scare I had, and so I can appreciate from firsthand experience everything that you're going through. So I'm really just here to answer any additional questions that you guys have about what's going on, about, you know, COVID-related stuff or anything else that we can talk about.
Okay.
Maybe it'll be a short conversation, which is good.
I'll start off,
Okay.
and Eddie, thanks for being here.
Sure.
So with State Bill 658, when that was enacted back, I don't know, sometime kind of over the summer months or such, there were a number of school districts in the state that said, we're not going to adhere to that.
Right.
We're going to kind of be a cowboy out here and do our own thing. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, I understand now we've gone through the whole.
How much time do you have? Well, it's
We're paying him. We're paying him by the hour.
I've got lots of time. Let me think. I want to be very careful about my words here. No, not, you know, I want to get too political, and I want to be 100% truthful with you. I was very disappointed about that bill because in my experience working with the 150 or so school districts that we work with, every one of them, and that certainly includes Bethany, are doing your dead level best to try to keep kids in school safely. And you know, there could be a time, I don't know about Bethany, but there has been a time in other schools where, you know, requiring kids to wear a mask, requiring employees to wear a mask, may be the only way to keep kids in school face to face. Because if you can't do that, then the next option is to go virtual, which regardless of 658, a school has the authority to do. But nobody wants that either. And I will tell you that I had conversations with superintendents now. You know, in full disclosure, I didn't advise Oklahoma City, although my firm does advise Oklahoma City. But I had conversations with superintendents who said, either I require masks or we're going to have to go virtual. And you know, I've told superintendents, I haven't told your superintendent this, I can say I'm not breaching any attorney-client privilege here, that if you as a superintendent feel that it's necessary to protect the health and safety of kids, to keep them in school, to do that, go ahead and do it. Because you have an obligation to provide a safe learning environment. And it's a, regardless of what you feel about it, is a terrible situation for everybody to be in. I mean, I've got a grandson that's a kindergarten student, and I just got off the phone with my son saying, you know, he's going to have to wear a mask where he goes to school, and he said, you know, he doesn't like it, but he knows that's what he has to do. And so it's, you know, we've seen that there's conflict at the Capitol, there's conflict between the governor and the state superintendent. It's put, and I know this from firsthand experience, it's put public health officials in a difficult situation, because I had that conversation with them, and I won't reveal those communications, but they feel like we ought to be able to say more to tell schools what they should be doing, but our hands are kind of tied by people higher up the food chain. But it's put school leaders in a difficult position because, you know, these folks, I'm just using this in a rhetorical sense, are having to tell parents, this is what we're requiring you to do, but we're not getting the backing of the health officials like we thought we would, although that's starting to strengthen. I mean, I think the city county health folks are getting stronger in their messaging about what ought to be done. That's a really long-winded answer. I probably didn't say a whole heck of a lot.
So in summarizing it, I mean, I would say, you would say allow the school leader to decide what they want to do. Because that was what happened in the cases where people went against the law.
Well, they were doing that initially, and there wasn't, you know, you didn't see, although there were threats of the governor or the AG, Attorney General suing somebody. That hasn't happened yet to my knowledge. But what happened last Wednesday in Oklahoma County District Court put a stop to all that, because the judge entered a restraining order. Now, in fact, I was trying to check, I checked earlier today that the official order hadn't been entered, but that's what's going to happen. And that'll at least put a stop to the effectiveness of 658 for the time being, subject to it being appealed to the Supreme Court. And that would probably take, I would have, if I had to guess, 60 to 90 days, depending on how quickly, you know, they got to it. It's a terrible situation, tough situation. Tough for families and kids, tough for educators, it's tough for everybody.
Thank you.
So can you further explain the injunction though? Is there an opt-out provision for parents? So basically the injunction states you can't say that you can ban masks, correct?
If I understand you correct, what the effect of the injunction is to give schools the authority to impose a mask mandate subject to 3 exemptions for students and 2 for employees if they want.
So state law will require that there's an opt-out provision.
That's correct. That's correct.
So even if a school wants to impose a mask mandate, every person in the district would have an opportunity to opt out of that.
That's correct.
So there is no way to just have a blanket mask mandate.
If you have, you can have the mandate, but it has, it has the option for the exemption if parents want it.
So
Really the one, and this is, with all due respect, this is kind of a legal fiction, the exemption language, and that's where I'm saying right now parents have the ability to opt out of immunizations based on those 3, the personal exemption. And I've asked this question many, many times, what you started hearing on the whole mask mandate discussion was the opt-out language when there really wasn't that clear language in the law. And the judge accepted that point last week and said, now I'm going to impose the restraining order with the exemption language in it. And so we've all been kind of hunting around, like, where are we going to get the exemption language? And we've got the school lawyers and other school leaders have settled on the 3, the health, religion, and the personal exemption. Are the reasons why you can request an exemption.
So they will amend.
Exemptions for employees.
That's based on federal law. Currently, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has stated that any employer of any kind can impose a mask mandate, public or private, and the only 2 established exemptions so far are religion and health, disability, basically.
Sure, philosophical exemption, that's under the vaccinations?
That's for students, yes.
Okay. So they'll amend the language of 658
Well,
that correct?
that wouldn't happen until they go back in session.
in the 60 or 90
Yeah.
days? Oh, okay, so back in session.
All the Supreme Court would do is say, the injunction stands or restraining order stands, or I'm sorry, it's an injunction. Injunction stands or it doesn't.
So basically puts local control back in the school.
Right.
The school district stands.
That's right.
And then parents have the option to opt out, which gives control back to parents if they choose that opt out for the child.
Yep.
Okay.
And it still makes it difficult, a situation for everybody, but that's establishes the lay of the land, if you will.
Yeah.
In counties, communities where there's a lot of spread.
Yeah. But for the whole point is local control, which is what Oklahoma City would have argued and what public schools would have argued and what other school districts would argue is that it kind of took local control out of the hands. So it's back now, and as you said.
If it holds, if you will, yes.
Do you see it holding? And if you say holding, what do you mean?
If the Supreme Court upholds the district judge's ruling.
Okay.
I think for logic, I'm no legal scholar, although I have, never mind. I was going to say. There was a bad joke.
There was a bad joke.
I'll skip it, but what I've learned in almost 40 years of practicing law is the trial judge gets a lot of, they give somewhat deference to what the trial judge hears. And so, I think there's a good chance it'll. What my real hope is by the time the outcome is decided, the cases have gone down so far that we don't care as much anymore. That's my hope. People get vaccinated. I do a little side reading, and hopefully the numbers will come down, so it's not as much of an issue. That's my hope.
I would hope that, but I would say this keeps coming back around. So we dealt with it. So we've been dealing with COVID since the 1920 school year, and then we dealt with 2021, and now it's 122. So it's
Right.
our third school year.
Right.
And, their continued variants, it feels as if it will not subside, that this will continue to be something that we would deal with. And so I think that's something that is in consideration as well, that it doesn't feel like a one and done. It feels like it keeps
Right.
coming up. And so it'll be interesting to see what the state decides. But at this point, we have to decide what we want to do. If we want to amend anything. So that's the injunction.
Yep.
The other question is Oklahoma City Health Department is now requiring us to quarantine as well. My question, I don't know if you know this, because I know you do public schools, I don't know if you have private schools. Are they also requiring the private schools in Oklahoma County?
I know
To quarantine
I know
their
the
students.
same letter has gone out to them, so my assumption, I believe it has, let's put it that way. I haven't talked to them, but I've seen,
The template letter?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay, yeah.
yeah.
So they are being expected to quarantine their
That's my,
students as well?
you didn't hear it from me. No, don't quote me on that. I understand that letter and the reason I think that is because I was on an email chain that
Right.
went out to a bunch of different people, and some of those weren't public schools.
Okay, but you don't know for sure if
No.
they're enforcing those quarantines as well?
Did not know that.
Okay.
And you talk about how does the health department have authority over schools?
They have authority over schools because of certain provisions in their law that deal essentially with communicable diseases. And it's kind of an extension of that language, and that the expectation that, once they make a determination that all the affected parties, whether they're public or private, are going to comply with that. And it's, this kind of goes back to the point I made before. I think, the health department, certainly, at least in my dealings with them, wished they could have used stronger language, but felt like they couldn't. And that's why they were reluctant to be quite as forceful in the template letter that there have been, I don't know how many different drafts of that same letter.
Yeah, because the initial one we received on a Friday talked about recommended, and then this one said you must comply.
Right.
And so I have a feeling our families were very confused.
Well, and it's not, the one thing I would say is from my interaction with them, it wasn't because they were wanting to confuse you. It's because they were, they were feeling pressure from other sources to not use stronger language.
What sources would you?
People higher up the food chain.
Meaning at the state level versus the county level?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I'm not going to name any names, but maybe I don't know. I'll move on. I definitely got from my interactions with them a sense of discomfort in that, in a conference call I was on about why they couldn't be stronger in their language. Here's the other thing as far as school. The State Department of Education is also, the state superintendent has also told you have to quarantine. And, so you've got kind of coming from a couple of different sources, both the state health department or the Oklahoma City County health department.
Well, I think the frustration for us, going back to this whole idea of the local thing, what is going in your community, in your school, was that last year we were told that we were forced to quarantine. And then right before our August meeting on August 2nd, 30 minutes before our meeting, we're told, well, no, you really weren't forced to. We just kind of wanted you to. So then we talked to our nurse, Tara's not here, and she said that last year we quarantined kids and 90 to 95% of them never got COVID. So they were exposed, but they never got it. And so they've kind of gone back and forth, and I think that was one of the frustrations too with Oklahoma County, is that they
oh, well, if we don't have to quarantine kids and 90 to 95% of them could have been in a class, we missed a lot of instruction. There were kids who missed a lot of instruction last year. So as a board in August, we decided to, not impose the quarantine. And they still had these. I mean, my understanding is this was in place. These are the statutes that they cited. And we asked for those because I was like, well, what is it that says we must do this? Because I was like, if you're just recommending it, can we go around that? So,
forgive me, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just gonna say, it was like 3 weeks ago, we're gonna let you do, no quarantine, you can opt out. And then all of a sudden they decided last week ago Friday, oh no, we're gonna do this. And my knowledge is, and my understanding is the private schools are not having to be quarantined, so
I think that's, some of them have elected, because some of the ones I know of are quarantined.
Who's quarantining?
OCS was, some of the people we know of here got
Really?
quarantined.
Yeah, okay. I didn't know. I mean, I asked.
I don't
like
know
the people
what
I know that go to
halls
OCS said no, but anyway.
And here's another problem, and I didn't even mention this in the information I sent to Drew, is that, the CDC recommends, directs quarantine, although they don't control you. The information on the state health department website directs schools to follow the CDC guidelines. And so, what do you, and I understand, you have a good experience here, but the other thing you have to consider is and I didn't mention this in my materials, is that last year the legislature passed the law which immunizes school districts from liability for complying with guidelines, local health department guidelines. In other words, you can't be sued or you can't be liable, but in order to have the protection of those, you have to be guidelines. You have to be following them. And so, if you, I realize it's a terrible choice to have to make. Okay, if we don't follow the guidelines, somebody gets sick, and somebody sues us, do we have immunity from that liability? That's an open question. I will say, thankfully, there were no lawsuits filed last year because somebody got sick, thankfully, or died, thankfully. And we had employees die. I think there's only been the one young man who passed away this year. So it's a tough.
Do you foresee that happening this year for schools that don't comply facing lawsuits?
The one thing we've said, the hard part is, in any of these situations, proving causation. Somebody would have to be able to prove that their child got sick at school. And that's tough. I mean, you have at least 2 cases, and I think it would be difficult. I'm knocking on Formica. So, is that Formica? Whatever.
We didn't spring for wood. So
you have a lot of money in your budget.
We do. I mean, I guess we could get some.
That's why we don't find wood.
Tough question.
So much like the mask mandate, where there were districts that said, hey, we're going to step outside of 658. In an article that I received just this afternoon, Bixby Public Schools has made a decision to not quarantine at all. To say, we're not going to quarantine, we're in fact going to create a dashboard that communicates transparency with our families to let them know where the cases are. But the burden that it's placed on, I think of our administrators and how hard they work and all the effort that they put in, the amount of things that Drew does and how we've hired this crew to educate our kids instead of to do the health department's job, okay? And when Bixby says they can step out, it kind of sounds like local can step out and do what they want to do. I may be wrong.
Oh, well, of course you can. It's only a matter of either the government, whether it's I wouldn't anticipate the State Department of Education going after a school district for doing. I wouldn't expect that. It would only be a matter of the Attorney General if he wanted to. Not in that situation, because I don't think they would be in favor of what Bixby. They would anticipate. Not speaking for the Attorney General, but
sure.
Or if you had a parent that got upset and for something like that. But yeah, I think for me, I think, I tell superintendents to, get the best information, the best evidence you can, and make the best decision you can. As hopefully as consistent with some guidelines, and go for it.
Yeah. I'm only aware of Bixby basically saying we're not going to do it. Are you aware of other districts that are doing it?
I haven't heard, I would have, you can, really this is primarily an issue for, I don't know, 20, 30 school districts in the bigger metropolitan areas. Although I was in Western Oklahoma last week talking to about 25 superintendents, and of those, I think there was only one that was considering a mask mandate, primarily because the case loads are down. I mean, yeah, they have cases, and I think the appetite for the community is different there, in the sense that there were people that were more strongly resistant to quarantine or masks. Not that, I'm not speaking for anybody else, but I got the sense that they would have a tougher time with their community if they were going to try to impose a mask mandate.
Is Bixby in Tulsa County?
That's what my other question.
My question is, are they invoking the same statute? And is their health
I would
officer?
imagine they are, but I'm not sure. I think they are.
In
Because-
Tulsa County?
Tulsa County and Oklahoma County are different than
Right.
everybody else.
Right.
Right.
They stand alone.
But we don't know that. We don't know if they're doing that there.
I don't know, I got a phone call from their attorney, but we didn't talk about that, so.
For Bixby or Tulsa?
For Bixby.
Oh, okay.
Law firm that represents both of them, but we didn't talk about that, so I'll ask him. I'm curious. It is interesting. Well, and here, I know of a district that was considering, rather than imposing a district-wide mask mandate, looking at if you have the information, the data, maybe only requiring this building or that building to mask for a week or two. Trying to be very precise about how you do it, just to try to, get ahead of or attack the problem in one building. I think you could do that too. You wouldn't necessarily, if you had, especially in a large district where you had, buildings on opposite sides of town almost, why do you have to do the same thing? I don't think you do, but I think that's just, you guys are in a little bit different situation because you're all kind of right here.
Yeah, I just feel like the opt-out provision would just make it kind of a moot point to just have a mandate.
Although I read today, and I don't remember where it was, that the numbers, and may not even been in Oklahoma. Follow me on Twitter. No, that's a joke. But,
Really? I'm on Twitter. I follow you. Is it the Center for Ed Law?
No, it's me. I've got like 14 followers, but they're all related to me too. No, no, but someone said that the percentages of people that were actually opting out was smaller than you would have expected. I don't know how. That's not scientific. That's me remembering something I read. So.
It's slow today.
Who's in the same blog with this one?
Yeah.
I think Oklahoma City has about 1%, and a couple of the other major districts have like 2%, 3% total opting out.
All right.
How
Yeah,
easy
so
do
it
they
flips
make
the
that?
norm.
Yeah, what's the process?
Yeah, what's the
The form.
process of the opt-out? Is it easy or is it difficult?
It's up to the school, I would guess.
It's not.
Parental
President.
notification.
I don't think. I think
What?
most of them are basically just turn in a form and they accept it. It's not.
Yeah.
So, what I heard you say to this board is, yeah, you can go against the grain if you want. Bixby's going against the grain. And they have the authority. We have in our the safe return and continuity plan right now that we're going to address in a little bit. Right now it says we will comply, follow the CDC and OCCHD guidelines. When I talked to you last week, you said, I recommend that you follow those guidelines.
Right.
But this board could, if they chose to, go off in a different direction, the Bixby direction.
Right.
So that, your opportunity to do that, or a mask mandate, or a whatever you want to do, it's all in that plan that we're going to address in just a little bit. And you can do nothing and just do what we're doing now. But you have that opportunity. I just want to make that
The one thing I would add is that if this board or any other board is going to do something that's not consistent with what the local health professionals are recommending, that you have another basis that's based on some recommendation from somebody, you know, that's an authoritative person or entity. So you don't just say, and not that you would, I mean, I've been to enough of the board meetings here to see, to realize that you guys make good decisions. At least when I was coming, you didn't know. But you have some basis for doing it. Not just that you don't agree with what, you know, this health department or the governor or whatever. That's not, you have a sound basis for whatever you decide to do.
I think I also heard you say that if we did choose to go against the grain, that we would lose some protections of liability.
There's a possibility that unless you have some, what you're saying is we're going to follow this guideline over here. And I don't know what other guideline you would be following, but I only know the CDC, the State Health Department, and the City County Health Department. I'm not sure where else you'd be getting your information.
I don't either.
Okay. But I'll to Ken's point, forgive me, I'll find out from Kent, from Bixby's attorney, what they're basing their decision on, and I'll share that with Drew.
Yeah, I didn't see it, and I don't recall, I don't recall reading it earlier.
Okay.
I mean, he does state a number of facts in regards to, similar to what Drew stated, 99.5% of students never became sick with COVID or tested positive. He talks about his administrators and all the work that they're putting in and just all the extra stuff that this is requiring them to do. And
His full letter, Rob's full letter, the superintendent, you probably know him.
No, I know of it.
Rob Miller is the superintendent. His full letter is at the bottom on a link on that OSSBA sends out, that weekly or daily thing. And it was a story on there, and Channel 25 did the story, and then you could read all about it. But his full letter was in there. So I haven't read the full letter. I've read pieces, but it's pretty much what Kent characterized as he's just saying they're overwhelmed with work. I can tell you that our two nurses are overwhelmed. We hired another person to help them. We're going to look at that tonight. We're going to look at hiring that person tonight. And the administrators spend a phenomenal amount of time doing that. I'm not saying that quarantine's right or wrong. First year, we didn't do it because we hoped to keep more healthy kids in school. I know that comes at a risk of kids that are in that 48-hour zone of being sick. What we want to do, what these guys want to do, what everybody here wants, is for us to, in person, educate kids. That's it. That's all we want to do. And jumping through the hoops that we have to do, it's just part of life. It's not like, poor Bethany, we have to jump through all these hoops. So does everybody else.
Right.
We have to make choices about what we're going to do, and that's what we'll do. But your recommendation is
follow the guidelines, follow what you're hearing from the
follow the CDC and OCCHD guidelines. Yes.
If nothing else, the state health department is telling you that,
and the thing that in and of itself is enough for me. What he said, the lawyer saying follow the law. But SDE also said you have to quarantine. Not bucking the State Department of Education recently has not gone well for neighboring school districts. I hope that we don't get in that situation.
What are you referring to? What districts?
Western Heights.
Okay.
In regard to COVID?
And in regard to bucking what SDE says, to do.
Other things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else, Randy?
I'm sure something will come up, but.
Can I come back when it's more fun?
You're going to be pretty busy in
You have
the
a way.
next few months, I'm sure. You've been earning every penny.
I've got the easy part of it. I've told him that I've got the easy part, so I don't have to do all the things that, other than my having a grandson, and that's the hard part, and being concerned about him. But as far as what all them they do, that's the hard part. I've got the easy part.
Andy, can you review for us just quickly, where does it state that the school has a duty to protect and to provide a safe?
Every Oklahoma school district in Oklahoma, if you want to have a school district, has to comply with the state accreditation standards. In order for a diploma to come out of Bethany to count for anything, regardless of how stellar Bethany is, Bethany has to be an accredited organization. And the state accreditation standards require you to provide a safe education environment. And I can assure you, when those were drafted, they weren't drafted with a pandemic in mind, without question. And there's no case law, there's never been, although we get sued, Bethany doesn't, but other school districts get sued all the time for quote unquote unsafe things that happen at school. And so I think it's in what we call the common law, or the law that the school is going to be operated in a safe manner. That's without question. And I say it because schools get sued all the time because allegedly they aren't. The flip side of that, or the other side of that, is you have an obligation to your employees to provide a safe environment. That's even more clear in the state labor statutes. And again, that wasn't written with a pandemic in mind, I'm sure, but it's nonetheless in the law. And it does include language regarding communicable diseases. So I don't think there's really any dispute that you have an obligation to provide a safe education environment on all kinds of levels. So. All right.
Thank you.
All right. May I be excused?
You may be.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
I'll be back on those other things.
Okay.
Cassie, did you have anything else?
We have 4.
Okay. We will now move to item number 5. And we'll allow input from the public on the safe return and continuity plan. They're limited to 3 minutes per person. I believe, were there guidelines handed out, Cassie?
Yes.
With that, okay. Please remember that whoever chooses to speak, that once you speak and have your 3 minutes, and I'll have a timer going, that we cannot address you. We can't go back and forth. So just say what you are here to say, and then we'll move on to the next one. But we do thank you absolutely for coming and sharing with us. So, let me get my timer ready. Get started. All right, Cassie, who's first?
Christopher Harrell.
Good evening. I guess you're first or you're last, right? I guess I'll go first. Hey, good evening. My name is Christopher Harrell. This is my wife, Amy. As many of you know, she's a middle and high school facts teacher. She made me erase it, but she's also a state champion cheer coach. So I always want to point that out. We've lived in district for 9 years. We've graduated 2 children from here, Hannah and Peyton, and currently have Woods, who's a junior at the high school. First, administration and board, let me first say thank you for your service and what you do for this community. I know how much time I spend on all of these issues, so I can only imagine the amount of time you dedicate to each of them. So you definitely have a challenging job, and that does not go unnoticed. So I'm here for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, I'm here for the kids. I'm here on behalf of Woods and countless other kids that just want to go to school. They want to play football on Friday night, volleyball on Tuesday night, play in the orchestra, march in the band, pom, show choir, cheers, Stuco, you name it. They want to be involved. Kids don't want to live in fear of being quarantined. They don't want to be afraid of who they sit by and who they hang out with. I can only speak of my household. I have a school-age child, not a grandchild, but anxiety and stress are at an all-time high. And it's all due to quarantine right now. And if you don't have school-age kids, you have no idea what I'm talking about. Because every decision that you guys make affects my child and our families. We have to stop quarantining healthy kids. They just want to be kids. Let's help them do that. Reason number 2, I'm here for this community. I believe in this community. I live in this community. And I've heard the community loud and clear for the last year. We want our kids in school. Let's trust the community to make the right decision for their child. If they're well, they go to school. If they're sick, they stay home. I think as a community, we can handle that. I want to go back to the board meeting on August 2nd and remind you what Mr. Eichelberger said. He said 2 things. Listen to your constituents and listen to your conscience. I think both are telling you the same thing. And secondly, he said, until someone comes and shuts us down, we're going to do our thing and what's best for Bethany. So I strongly recommend we take his advice and do what's best for Bethany. Until someone comes and shuts us down, let's keep educating our kids, growing our community, and being a school that everyone looks to that does the very best for their students. So facts over fear this year. Let's fight to keep our kids in school. So thank you for your time and thank you for your commitment to Bethany.
Amy Sharilla. Hey everybody. You've all gotten emails from me, so now you have a face with a name if you didn't know me. As a parent of a teenager, lots of teenagers, we have a lot of conversations in our house about doing the right thing. About how just because everyone's doing something, it doesn't always make it right. And how there's always a choice in making the right decision. Our students have spent the last year and a half sacrificing their education for the most vulnerable of the population. Vaccines are now available for that population. Yet here we are, still telling certain students they must continue to sacrifice their in-person education with no end in sight. So I need to ask, when do you all decide enough is enough and return to giving our kids the education that they need and they deserve? When do we decide as a board and an administration and a community that the students' education comes first, despite their vaccination status? If this were a health issue, all schools in the state of Oklahoma would be required to follow this policy of quarantining unvaccinated students for 10 days. The truth is they are not. Private schools all around the city and state are continuing to educate their entire population in person. They aren't spending their days contact tracing, calling parents, ripping healthy kids out of their classes, and telling them to go home and isolate from their friends, their teachers, and activities they love for 10 days. Their teachers aren't stressed trying to figure out how to make a near impossible situation work, and they're focusing on educating students. I'd also like to mention the hardship this policy puts on parents. We have jobs, we have to work, so when a student is ripped out of class for 10 days, we just have to figure it out. You stated in the last meeting, you have data from last year, 90 to 90% of the students you sent home did not come down with COVID. Use this data to serve the students and the community well. Does it make sense to send healthy kids home to isolation for a 5% chance of contracting a virus with a near 100% chance of survival? I'm saying no. I have a junior this year, Neely. She's taking the ACT. This policy directly affects how prepared she's going to be for the ACT. She's smart, but she needs to be in class. Please help set her up for success by keeping her in the classroom. I'm asking you to vote tonight to stop the discriminatory quarantining of healthy students and let them get back to learning. It's important to their future as well as their mental health, and I'm speaking for the 95% of our healthy students at BPS. It may not be the popular or recommended thing to do, but for their well-being, it's the right thing to do. I don't want to fight with anybody. I'm just a parent with healthy kids who want to go to the school that they love. Mandy Chapman Roach.
Hi, Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you my perspective. I'm a teacher in the district. I have a daughter in the district. And what I would like you to consider is putting in place a mask mandate. I have to tell you guys, teaching in a mask is the worst. I hate it. I really do. I feel constricted, and I feel it's exhausting. But I will tell you that last year I made some of the best relationships I've ever made with my students, despite having to wear a mask. So it is possible to forge those connections with this hindrance on you. I feel compelled to talk today, especially in light of the hospital situation in our state. The hospital bed 7 weeks ago, I experienced sudden cardiac arrest, and I needed emergency medical care to save my life. I'm sorry. And there was an ER bed for me, and there was an ICU bed for me that day. And I can't say that that would be the case if this happened to me today. And that shakes me to the core of my being. And I know that masks are not fail-safe, they're not perfect. Spread can happen even with masks, but we do know that the data tells us that it does impede the spread. And I want to be a good example for my daughter and for other community members and say that for healthcare workers, for people who have health emergencies every day, I want there to be a hospital bed for them. And so that's why I came to share with you my experience. Thank you.
Miranda Cauldron.
Hi. I came across this quote from C.S. Lewis the other day, and I wanted to share it all with you, or share it with you all. One of the most cowardly things that ordinary people do is shut their eyes to the facts. I would like you to consider these facts and not emotion when making any choices regarding quarantines or mask mandates. The first fact is, as you guys talked about in the last board meeting, a very low percentage of kids that we quarantined last year actually got the virus. And you guys said it was about 95% of the kids. Another fact I have, according to the AAP, American Academy of Pediatrics, if kids get the virus, 99.97% of them are not in danger for their lives. And it is not believed that kids are significant spreaders to adults. Another fact, if our kids get the virus antibodies aren't a bad thing to have. They help our bodies do what it is designed to do, to fight disease. My last fact is our kids need stability in their lives for mental health. Going in and out of school wreaks havoc on our families and their mental health, and our children and their mental health. Ask any mental health professional about the cases that have exploded because of the instability our kids and families are experiencing. What I heard tonight from our legal counsel is that there is no new law from either the Oklahoma County Health Department or the State Department of Education regarding mandatory quarantining of healthy kids. I hear that it's a recommendation. In the board meeting on August 2nd, you said at Bethany we would keep kids in school until they came to shut us down. Being at home and quarantine when healthy is not being in school. We would like to encourage our administration to be courageous enough to be different, to go against the grain, to make a statement that our kids' mental health and education matter. I would like to remind each one of you not to shut your eyes to the facts when making decisions for our students. Thank you.
Ricky Dippy.
Hi, I'm Ricky Diffie. I have two sons attending Bethany Elementary. I'd like to start off by saying how extremely thankful I am that we've been able to be mask-free this year. However, I see schools surrounding us starting to cave, and it really saddens me how much these districts have fallen into a fearful mentality, in my opinion. I urge you to help us remain a school that is standing out for our parental freedoms. As a mother, I take a very holistic approach to my children's health. I take a natural approach to all our health needs, looking at mind, body, emotion, spirit. I habitually incorporate nutrition, physical exercise, time outdoors, soaking up vitamin D, essential oils, mindfulness, you name it. We're doing it. The list goes on. As a family, we've walked around town, lived life as normal since the pandemic, mask-free. No one in my household has become sick with COVID-19. The point I'm trying to make here is that I feel completely adequate and confident in making health decisions for my children. Masks do not fall into the category of health for my family. We actually see masks as an inhibitor to our health, being that breathing fresh, clean air is essential to a healthy lifestyle. As well as children seeing their friends and their teachers' faces is also extremely important to their social and emotional development. I ask that you keep true to how we have started the school year, mask mandate free. With all that being said, I know I'm doing my part as a parent to ensure more than a wholesome environment for my children's health to thrive. I ask that you would let our healthy children remain at school. COVID-19 is an extremely similar virus to the flu. Schools never sent home healthy children who sat next to a child that came down with the flu. They sent the child home that had the flu because that's what makes sense. What is happening with this quarantining system is lacking common sense, in my opinion. And on top of that, individuals who have had the COVID-19 vaccine are likely to be spreading the virus just as much as people who have not been vaccinated. The vaccinated or unvaccinated questions needs to be thrown out regarding quarantining. Again, it makes no sense and it's discriminatory. Me and my children will never be vaccinated, and the person who chooses to be vaccinated or to have their child vaccinated has more rights than my children. Why? They are just as likely to spread this virus, and that does not make sense. Healthy students showing no signs or symptoms of a virus that has a 99.985% survival rate in their age category, according to the CDC, they need to remain in school. In what world is it okay to send healthy children home from school? If you're saying, well, it's okay in this world that we live in today, why? Just because other people are doing it? That doesn't make it right. I had my child out of school last week for a toothache for not even a full 2 days. The amount of work sent home for those 2 days was pretty astonishing to me. I cannot imagine nearly 2 weeks of my child being home completely healthy. Can I say the last paragraph? Or?
No, time's up. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you to everyone who spoke with us. Is that everything? Thank you. I do appreciate everyone coming and sharing that with us. So, all right, we will move on to item number 6, discussion and possible action to modify the safe return and continuity plan. So we discuss. What do y'all think?
Do you have a copy of the continuity plan, Drew? Do we have it?
I don't, but
I did not print one off. I should have.
Can you go to your office?
The return to learn plan?
Yeah, it's the safe continuity plan. It's the one that we did this summer.
Is it, it's on the website?
Mm-hmm. It is, but I think I can.
I'll make sure.
Yeah, I didn't print it out, but I did look at it. And so basically the two things that, I mean, it says that quarantines are optional and masks are optional. So we decide whether we want to change any of those.
Right.
That was really the fundamental.
Continue.
We leave it as it is or we amend.
The quarantining optional thing goes, and it also says later that we'll follow all the rules of OCCHD, so we need to clean that up. It's one or the other. At the time it worked, but that's not what we're doing. We're either follow them or we make the choice to step out there.
So Bixby style?
Because they have changed their guidelines
Yeah,
or their
yeah,
recommendations, and so that's why we changed.
In August,
Yes.
we were planning to do what they told us we had to do all last year. They came back and said, no, that was really a recommendation and we're not telling you you have to. So we didn't. We said, okay, we don't have to, we don't. 3 weeks later, they say we have to. So it's really up to this board to decide if we're going to change any of that.
Do you know in the case of Bixby, did Rob Miller make that choice himself, or did he put that in front of his board?
I didn't read his letter, but knowing Rob as I do, he didn't do that without board support, whether he had a board vote or not. I can assure you that he had.
We still don't know if they had that mandate from their county health department either.
Yeah, it'd be a little different there.
That's
the part I don't know.
From what because I went out to the state health department, their wording's not as strong as it is in county health. We have to follow it in county health because of the way the state laws written. That's our health department.
Yeah,
So it
but
really-
again, we still don't know what Tulsa's health department said. If they're not saying it, then Bixby's doing what they want to do.
I can't tell you what Tulsa's health department is saying, but I can tell you what Rob told me last week.
Okay.
I talked to him on the phone. He said none of the big schools last week were following the quarantine in Tulsa. And he said that that health department up there wanted them to, but they didn't put any language like Les is talking about. They have not forced them to do so.
I mean, are their numbers less? What's the difference? You know, like, I'm like,
I doubt it. I don't know for sure. I have looked at Tulsa numbers and Oklahoma City numbers, and they're pretty close to the same whenever the OSSBA thing that is sent out. Here's what I want you guys to know. I'm going to make a statement you already know, but I want to make it again for you guys. And that is, I will carry out whatever this board says to do. So you tell me to do it, that's what we'll do. You heard what his recommendation is. If we go against that, there are some things that we have to be willing to go against. We don't have that we have some liability. We don't have that immunity. The SDE, what I think Joy will do is send a letter to all the districts that are not quarantining, saying you must comply. The letter's just step one. It'd be a long time before she said, we're taking you over.
but wouldn't she be sending that to every district? I mean, everyone in all of the counties?
Her expectation is that everybody complied with.
Even in Northwest Oklahoma?
Even my good friend that is going to take a beating on the football field from Woodward Friday night they are currently not quarantining. They were quarantining. They decided not to quarantine right before he stepped out there and decided not to, right before we got told that we are. And he's on her Joy's advisory committee, so that's awkward.
Well, how many kids are quarantined right now? What are our numbers?
The only numbers that I have are what last Friday's numbers. And
No, I'm sorry. I mean, healthy kids are quarantined, not the sick kids. I think our number of students.
Yeah, because the numbers we got.
46 kids
How many were?
that were positive cases.
Right, what the positive cases were.
How many kids are healthy kids that were exposed, do you know?
I know elementaries, 25 to 30, and that's
In the
a
whole
range
school?
because of every day, some go
He's
out,
talking
some
about
go
his
out.
school, right?
Just elementary.
Right, but in your whole school, I mean, your two buildings,
Yeah,
you're 700 kids.
762.
I'm sorry,
There's a lot.
You got 25 to 30 kids in all of your elementary that are quarantined as healthy exposed cases.
As far as we know, yes. I'll tell you, we have 8 positive kids. We have 25 to 30 quarantined that we don't know are positive.
Yeah. Okay.
Which they may or may not get sick, which,
And, yeah, it was a 5% case last year. We were masking last year too.
yeah.
And I know that could change. This variant seems to be more catchy about the kids too.
Yeah.
At least my wife's daycare is taking a beating.
Going
They
through
don't
the-
mask and they don't quarantine, but the numbers are huge compared to, they've been open through the whole thing and this is the worst it's ever been.
I forget where I saw it, but with the numbers that have gone up, about 25% of the new numbers are kids. Yeah, they're under age 18 that are the positive cases. So kids are getting sick. Obviously, it's a kind of a different animal from what we've had last year. So,
So is it, each month, do we relook at this policy that we have until we're?
Okay.
I just didn't know if nothing happened this time, do we look at it again?
Well, last year, I think we adopted something in August. And then we kept that for a while, and then we went to a matrix situation because we wanted to have an objective numbers, go by a number instead of just kind of making a decision based on some medical personnel that he was speaking with. And so we kind of went to that, and that took us through into February when we decided to do away with that. And then, but we were still quarantining the whole year. So, I mean, for me, the thing is again, like I said earlier, is that we just keep, I mean, COVID just is here, right? I mean, this is the third school year that we're dealing with it, and we're never gonna get to 0 cases of COVID. I mean, I just don't see this being realistic. I mean, you know, I'm saying it's just, you know, we're now on Delta variant, we're hearing about Mu, I mean, whatever, you know, it's here. And so I don't feel like we can just put our head down and say, oh, well, we'll just get through this phase and then we can move on. I mean, it's here. I don't think it's realistic to say we're gonna have 0 cases of COVID.
well, and for the same reason, I don't feel like we can just say, I don't want to talk about it anymore because I'm tired of it. I don't think we can ignore things. I don't feel like we should ignore what the health department is recommending. And I don't think that's the right thing to do.
Kent kind of said something, the rule of law thing is important to me. And, you know, it was a little bit upsetting to me. The districts were like, we don't like your law, so we're going to do it anyway. That's what the court was for. Should have went and sued them first. Get your injunction and then do what you want to do. But
you saying Bixby?
No, Oklahoma City or any of the districts that were putting mask mandates in place.
Right.
Without just running and taking the law.
Well, and this is what I would say. I'm not saying that we ignore it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's here. And it's like a normal, we're gonna have to deal with it. And so quarantining healthy kids indefinitely for the, you know, for this is what we do every school year, I think is not a wise decision. I just don't see wanting to do that. And
I agree with that. I'm just not sure, as long as, you know, the state law that was quoted to us in the email, I'm not sure if it was in the template. Yes.
Yeah, it's not in the template. He didn't put it in there.
But that's pretty clear that they have the authority to mandate quarantines.
But and
it goes back to, I mean, even as a history buff. So if you go back to the pandemic of 1918, which was flu, they were quarantining basically blanket cities. Everybody had to stay in because they kind of an overreaction, but then again, it wasn't. I mean, people were dying close to the numbers that are here, which was more of a shock to them then than it is to us now.
But I don't think they kept doing it year after year.
No, but they did for 2 years. So that's where a lot of this law, you know, remember our Constitution, a lot of Oklahoma's laws were written when that was happening.
Actually, I think they said this one came from 1963.
Yeah.
So this was from 1963.
But
yeah,
there's a lot of history in that of different pandemics that have occurred. That's where that history of that law, I think, starts.
There was a big one in
there.
1957. I think there was, but
yeah.
I mean, they didn't do this in the H1N1 flu, and that was a massive epidemic.
Yes.
I mean, but they never did any of this then.
No.
And the thing about this is that what bugs me is they're not doing this in private schools. The private, if it's a public health issue, they are not quarantining the private schools, but our public school kids have to be quarantined.
Did the private schools get the letter, or did the private schools not? That's the question, or are they ignoring it like Bixby?
I don't know, I would really like to know that question. I mean,
And they're not under
use-
the authority of the State Department of Education either.
No, but they are in the authority of the same
The
statute
health
that's
department,
quarantining our
I
kids.
agree with that, but that's an issue for the health department, not us.
Yes, I would say that too. But the thing that bugs me is that the none of these people are elected. Not Mr.
They're
Withers,
appointed. That's why.
not the CDC. They're just people that work for the government that are just telling us, don't send your kids to school. And I just, it's a lot of overreach for me. I mean, it's just like, and it's not definite, there's no time frame. It's just like, this is what you're gonna do.
I'm not saying that.
It's not.
And I'm with you, Les.
And I didn't agree with the, necessarily, I kind of agreed with what the law was saying, because I felt like they were state, I would prefer it be at local control level, but,
Yeah, it's no local control. Like COVID's taken all of our local control. It's just like, this is the way. That's my fundamental issue. And so if the first year was like we let it go, the second year we let it go, but now this is the pattern. This is where you're going to be. So how long do you say? I mean,
I had one of those kids that were quarantined 3 times. 0 symptoms, was missed out on a lot. That was only 3 weeks. I know some have been quarantined a lot more. So I do know how much it affects.
Mine was quarantined too, because of me, because I got it, and he never got it. We were in the same house, and I understand, but, it goes back to what state laws say.
Yeah.
And if we don't like it, then we need our representatives and our senators and our government to change it.
Then they'd have to overrule the guy who's not elected.
Somebody needs to sue, but I don't think we have the legal dollars to go have them do that. We need Bixby to go do that.
Sounds like every big school in Tulsa.
Well, yeah, but if they decide to make Bethany the example, then it's going to be paid for by the patrons of this district.
Our patrons are, but I mean, we have kids who will miss 56 days of school last year. We have kids who missed 12 weeks of school last year. I mean,
I think my son was quarantined maybe 5 times last year. 5 times. He missed out on summer ball, he missed out on all kinds of stuff. So I totally, I'm like you, Chad, I get it. And when you've got multiple kids, it's like playing whack-a-mole, trying to figure out who's in school and who's not. But even with that, I'm with Les. I don't feel like we can pick and choose which laws and which organizations that are established and there for a purpose, recognize
And
by
while
the
I
law.
think they're being wishy-washy as all get out, they have now provided us with the statutes. And until, our legal representative can't tell us that they're wrong, that's what it's going to need.
I think they have caved in the past to political pressures, but I believe because the numbers had increased so much, they were getting pressure to say, okay, you can't cave to the politics up here, you have to buck up and do, what's necessary for public health.
if it were really public health, they'd be after the private schools too.
I agree.
I just cannot buy that argument enough because it feels.
But do we have a survey of which private schools do and which don't? Because I'm getting anecdotal that some of the private schools are all requiring that, or not all private schools, but there are private schools are doing mask mandates.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Last year I know a lot of them did, but I don't know.
Yeah.
All of them did.
So, which I was hearing tonight, think they want that either.
The mask mandate? I mean, it's optional, and
It is.
80 to
yeah.
90% of
It is.
people are not
I mean,
wearing
I'm
them, so.
Much better with the way it's set up, if we were doing it the way that there are better opt-outs now.
There's just, yeah, there's just no
Because
way.
if we're going to be required to quarantine, fact of the matter comes to the CDC rules say that if we're masking, then it goes to 3 from 6. So it cuts the number. Right?
Yeah, but even if
Right.
we wanted to put a mask mandate in, my guess is that we're gonna have a much higher level than 1 to 2% of people. It would not even, I think it would just
I
be
still
kind
think
of,
we're too early for that,
To-
based on the numbers.
to require a mask mandate?
Yeah. Unless it's going to cut our quarantine.
How does, this is the thing I don't get. If we have a mask mandate and 50 to 60% of the people opt out of it, it doesn't even meet the requirement.
To do it.
Right. It doesn't, to me, it just doesn't even make sense to require it. If people have the opt-out option, there is no way to force everyone to do it. You just can't. And it comes down to personal choice.
Well, I think with that and the way some schools have done it, it has flipped the normal to be wearing a mask. And then the kids who don't want to wear a mask, or the parents don't want them to wear a mask, then they can opt out, and that's fine too. But the mask wearing is more protective of people when the majority are wearing masks. And so that's where that comes in. But let's try to split this out a little bit so that we can move the discussion along. So we're talking about quarantine. Do we want to change what we are doing, which is currently going with the health department's requirement of quarantining? Do we want to change that and not go with the county health department?
Drew, where on here does it state, I mean, I'm sure it's right here, I guess, on the bullet point right here on page 3. Employees are instructed all, we will follow the CDC. OSHA, is that what that is?
Mhm.
That says all workers will follow.
Yes, that's right. Cool, talking about. But I think Heather said, I didn't see it, but Heather said that somewhere it says that quarantine's optional.
Oh, yeah, on,
Yeah.
It's on the bottom of page 4.
We will not quarantine exposed students.
So that would
Transfer
be what
remote.
That's right. So,
we need to adjust because we are currently.
Yeah.
Yeah, they would amend this.
Contradicted itself. Once they contradicted themselves.
Yeah, very bad. We will not quarantine exposed students. Parents will be notified if their child is exposed, yeah.
Shall we continue as we have been with following the county health department?
That mean we need to amend this?
Yeah, I mean, I think, do we need to vote to?
Yeah.
we will need to vote yes, because this is a document you guys voted on. So what you would do if you're going to keep quarantining, we need to remove this thing that says it's voluntary. That needs to be in the motion. And then this OSHA is nothing. I think that's supposed to be OSDA.
Well, it's
OSHA.
OSHA, but yeah.
But it should be OCCHD. That's what I thought was on there. So those are the two things to change, if you're going to change that part.
If we choose not to follow the health department's recommendations, we just need to leave it as is.
You need to leave that as is. You would want to take out the part about following the guidelines. You wouldn't, actually, we don't have OCCHD on there. That's
We have CDC.
Yeah.
And OSHA.
That's just related to the OBS custodial employees. That's not related to
Right, so
employees.
We would do
I
that.
don't think we have
Yeah,
anything
it's not
that's
in there.
called alcohol.
No, I don't think so.
So then you would just, it would just be keep these in place and amend, well, no, you would have to change that, yeah. Yeah, you can't amend that. Well, then this was probably not correct anyway, because we weren't following the CDC advice of masking when we adopted this, if this is what we were, yeah, when we adopted back in August.
All right.
So it was already wrong anyway. Or not correct. Either way. Do we want to do?
Make a motion. I'd like to follow the county health department. Continue that.
What was the motion?
No, she's saying she's.
Oh, well, she was saying.
Waiting for someone to make a motion. That's just my,
Do we want to do we want to follow the Oklahoma City Health Department, or do we want to, we're not going to quarantine?
So this has to be amended no matter what, to go one way or the other.
We need to amend page 3, page 4.
what do we need to change on page 3?
That's
Well,
the OBS.
That's the.
Yeah,
That's ODS.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
You're right.
just-
Sorry, you're right.
Just page 4.
Yeah, that last.
Policies, procedures.
You said that and I was reading, sorry, my fault.
So the question is are we going to amend this to meet what OCCHD has said is their requirements under state law?
I'd like to see a step out like Bixby is doing. Sounds like there's a number of other districts in the Tulsa area that are, you know, whether they've released the letter, I haven't seen anything like that. But I think that's a direction I would like to go.
I would be willing to do that if they could give me a legal basis for it. But so far, all I've seen is the legal basis for us following it.
To me, it just seems like,
And just remind me, it removes our, most likely removes our immunity if, heaven forbid, we lose a student or a teacher. We've opened ourselves up for it.
That's true, but he did say, he sat there and said, you'd have to prove causation.
Sure.
You'd have to prove causation. And this is the other point.
But there
about
is a
this.
legal protection if you are there.
Yes. But,
If we follow the deal, you don't have to prove causation. Doesn't matter, you follow the rules.
right. But here's something else to consider. I'm with you. I'm very torn about this. Very. This is hard. And this is way above what any of us are signed up for, is to make these decisions. But the thing that everyone's focusing on is only the health aspect. What about the emotional and mental aspect that our kids have been going through? The quarantines, the anxiety, am I gonna, we have kids sitting in closets so they won't sit next to somebody so they can play in their game on Tuesday night or Friday night or whatever. And I mean, if this were just the first year or the second year, but this is the third year, and COVID, we just have variant after variant, I just feel like there's just not an end. And I feel like we just keep surrendering school year after school year for our kids. It's hard. I don't know. I know, we need to make a decision.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, I hear what he's saying, and I,
You know, I want to teach my student anyway, whether I like them or not, I follow the rules of the land, and then work through the system to change them if I don't agree with them. And, you know, I'll go lobby health departments, state reps, and all of that I need to get that change that I can. But to just say, I don't like it, so I'm not gonna do it, is what we're saying. And I'm sorry, I can't vote for that.
Well, I mean, Chad, it's just unprecedented. I mean, we keep using the word, it's unprecedented, but.
It is, and we're all very ready to be over it, but we're not there yet. So, we need a motion, and we need a vote.
Do you have any thoughts, Dad?
I know the emotional toll that it's taken on everyone, and the kids as well. Luckily, we only had one, or not lucky for him. We only had one that had to quarantine for 3 weeks, and he's that's the worst thing that's ever happened to him. So, yeah, I too, I'm a fan of the Bixby thing as well. I would like to know more their legality behind it, but it sounds like they made a decision for a reason. And I know we have to make a decision on this to go one way or the other.
Well, I mean, technically we could, if we really wanted to go find out what their legality is, we could. I mean, we could continue what we're doing. We could do another special board meeting if we wanted to do that. I mean, it's a possibility if you don't feel comfortable making that decision tonight.
No, I'm comfortable making the decision. I just would like to know a little bit more behind it.
Do you want to quit the quarantining? You want to go Bixby?
I would be in favor of that, yes.
So you're saying you're fine with going against what the county health department has recommended?
Yes, I mean, I would be for us going our own direction.
You're in favor of keeping kids in school, right?
Yes, yeah, keeping kids in school.
And to be clear, that would be my preference, but that's not what state law says right now. And I don't think we're the forum.
You don't think that?
And I don't think our governmental system, this is the forum where that gets changed.
Yes.
Now, if they gave us the authority, it's a whole different issue. And we would be making a decision.
Well, I mean, our state representatives who were elected went to the legislature and made a law, and it got overturned by a court judge who wasn't elected either.
But it hasn't finished its appeals either.
The district court judge.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Meanwhile, our kids are just locked in.
I understand.
I'm telling you. Well, let's make a motion.
I would make a motion, but I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to say here. All right, so I'll make a motion to leave it as is. Is the bullet point right above that? We will continue to contact, trace, notify parents or students. I guess if we're going to adopt that, then it becomes it's my understanding, just from the quick letter, and I know you can reach out to the superintendent group, is that, I mean, they're not necessarily notifying parents. They're providing a dashboard that provides the parents with the information of what school or, you know, what classroom or whatever it might be.
I don't know, I would, if we do this, we will need to continue
Revamp a
to-
lot of this probably.
Well, we're gonna need to still tell parents, because there are some parents that are gonna wanna keep their kids
Sure.
at home, and so they wanna know when there is a kid that was sick in their class, and if their child was within 3 or 6 feet. We will continue to do that. That's just part of what we do. It's a lot on these guys. It's a lot on those. But either way, whether we quarantine or not quarantine, we're still gonna do that contact tracing and tell those parents. I think it's the right thing to do for all of our parents.
Which is what we were doing before the.
What we were doing the first 3 weeks.
Which is what this
Exactly.
says, so leave it as is.
So
If you don't.
that's
do that.
right. So,
But we,
your,
I'm sorry.
your motion, as I see it, is to leave this as is.
It's in place, but we changed it 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago, whatever it was, because of the statute. Or
We didn't change
We did not change it. We have not voted to change it.
We didn't
We just
change
started
it.
following that
Yeah.
because of what the authority that was sent to Drew needs to put it in place.
Okay. Makes sense. All right. So I make a motion to keep the safe return and continuity of services plan in place.
And Kent, maybe just to be clear on that and to not quarantine students. So if you'll say that way, that's what this
That's what it
says.
says here, right?
That's what it
That's
says
what
in
it
here.
says.
That says
We will not quarantine exposed students.
that it's voluntary, right?
Yeah,
That's what it is.
that's good. You're good.
A second,
Second.
roll call vote.
Jaggers.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Palmer.
No.
Pettit.
No.
Wallstad.
Yes.
All right. Now let's move on to, let's see, did we want to talk about anything else on that?
Well,
Changing anything?
The only thing I saw in here were bullet points we talk in here about, we're researching, we're getting ready to hear here in just a second. Maybe we need to, do we need to identify if we do go in that direction? We were,
What's that?
for
HVAC.
HVAC, says we're
Yeah.
currently improving, we're researching ways to improve our ventilation system.
Do we have a presentation?
Next.
Okay.
We do have that?
Yes.
Okay. So I take it we don't, or do we want to talk about masks or no masks? Or leave it as?
I mean, yeah, that's the only thing we amended. I think masks were optional on
Yeah.
page 3, so.
So just keep that as is, it sounds like. All right. Is there anything else on that which I wanted to discuss before we move on? Okay. We will move on to item number 7, which is the presentation of the HVAC ionizers by Enviratech.
For you guys.
Oh, yeah.
They've just been sitting around waiting for us.
For a long time.
Who is that?
Yes, the tech.
I thought they got
Drew, I hope you come up with more.
Do you know, Mark, do you have any waters?
I mean, I can
get some?
got water bottles, but
I mean,
I.
there's bottles right here in this refrigerator.
Can you hear us? Oh, yeah, go ahead, we can, those are those, yeah.
Sure, yes. Clear. How are you guys doing this evening?
Good.
Thank you.
Good. I'm Grant McCreary with Enviratech, Oklahoma. I run our Oklahoma office. here in the state. I mean, as you're aware, a lot of schools have been putting bipolar ionization in a lot of the schools. And we've been doing that. Just a few school districts across Oklahoma, so we kind of reached out to Drew and trying to determine if this is something that you guys want to do. So from that, I brought on Mike Herron, who's at Plasma Air. He's a national sales rep. He kind of knows the ins and outs and is willing and able to just give you a brief overview and answer any questions you may have. So with that, Mike, you can take over.
Thanks, Grant. Much appreciated. And I understand with a short window here, so I want to go over this from a very high level, just real quickly how ionization works, why it's beneficial, and why it's the most effective means of indoor air quality out there. To just tell you a little bit about myself first, I have 38 years in the HVAC industry, and I have about the last 25 involved around air distribution and indoor air quality. So that's kind of my area of expertise. And I've been with Well Air Solutions or Plasma Air for the last 3.5 years. I actually started up this distribution channel for Plasma Air. As I jump into ionization real quick, just to give you a real quick overview and a real quick idea. Why ionization? Ions are Mother Nature's filter. So basically what you have in the most pristine natural environments across the globe, you have about an average ion count of about 1,000 to 1,200 ions per cubic centimeter. Now, ions are generated naturally out from nature, from wind, rain, waterfalls, lightning, just a multitude of things is where ions come from. So the more pristine that environment, the higher the ion count you're going to find. As we come down out of the mountains, and let me kind of share my slide here with you. And I will pull this up real quick. So as we start to come down out of the mountains, if you can see my screen here, that pristine environment here on the far right is about 1,000 to 1,200 ions per cubic centimeter. In many cases, depending on the outdoor environment around it, it could be higher, it can be lower. But typically as we come down out of the mountains or away from the ocean, those ion levels will drop down to about 800 to 1,000 ions per cubic centimeter. You get into a small town, for example, and those small towns will carry ion levels of about 600 to 800 ions per cubic centimeter. Then we get into large cities, and they'll drop down to about 400 to 600 to 300 to 500 ions per cubic centimeter. But when you typically come indoors, those ion levels will drop down below 200 ions per cubic centimeter, and in many cases, they'll drop down below 100. So basically, when you get inside buildings, construction gets tighter, buildings get tighter, and so homes don't breathe as much. So in turn, the indoor air quality diminishes drastically. So basically, our goal with ionization is to take that left-hand column that's low and get back to where that pristine environment is. And that's really what we're doing with ion generators. Now, what's an ion generator? Basically, an in-duct system-mounted ion generator will produce both positive and negative ions. Many people say, why don't you just produce negative ions? Positive ions are kind of what actually attaches itself to the contaminants. So if we produce more positive ions along with the negative, there's more opportunity for contaminants to attach themselves to something. So what positive and negative ions do, we produce them, they go out into the occupied space. Those ions create what I call the agglomeration effect. I call it the clustering effect. But because you have both positive and negative ions, just like a magnet, they will attach themselves to one another and they'll grow in size. 98 to 99% of all particulates will pass through a filter in your HVAC system. Reason being is typically anything that's below 3 microns in size, the filter will not hold it unless it's a HEPA filter. And 99% of the systems out there are not designed to handle HEPA filtration. So from that standpoint, it's really probably more like 99.5%, but I tell people 98% of all particulate matter will pass through that filter and just continue to keep circulating out into the air. So by taking and producing positive and negative ions, we're taking those small particles that are below 3 microns, and they will grow in size. As they grow in size, they get larger, and now as the HVAC system pulls that air back through that return air and gets back to that filter, they will now stick in there, and those filters will load quicker. That particulate that gets large enough that it can't, and heavy enough that it can't make it back to the filter, it will fall down out of the breathing space and down to the floor of the furnace. Now there's two things I always want to, really there's three things I always kind of want to tell people when they put in ion generators. One of those is commercial buildings notice this a little less than a homeowner would. But typically for about 60 to 90 days after you put in an ion generator, you're going to see an increase of dust in a facility or an increase of dust in your home. Reason being is that particulate matter is getting larger, it's falling down out of the breathing space that doesn't make it back to the filter. Two, the second thing is filters will load much, much quicker. What do you mean? Do we make a filter more efficient? We don't really make it more efficient because we're making the particulate larger. So, but what we mean is it will pick up more stuff a lot quicker as if it's a more efficient filter. So for example, filters are rated MERV ratings. And so the higher that number, the more efficient the filter. We can take a MERV 8 filter and it'll load at the rate of about a MERV 11 to MERV 13. So they do load quicker. To give you the physical evidence of that, here's what a filter typically will look like. This was an unsolicited picture that one of our distributors actually sent us of one of their sales guys who replaces his filter every month. The two filters on the left were before ionization was added, and he replaces these filters religiously every 3 days. And then you see what happened in January and February shortly after ionization was added. So that kind of gives you a visual representation of what I talk about. And so in turn, where you hear people talk about increased ventilation in a building, increased filters in a building, an average commercial building is designed at a MERV rating of about 7 to 8 MERV. You go put in a MERV 11 or MERV 13, and then you may not see an immediate situation, but down the road, you're going to see failures in mechanical equipment because the pressure drop's going to be so great on that airflow that goes through there. So many systems aren't designed for those high efficiency filters. So we hear people saying, well, the thing you need to do is put a higher efficiency filter in it. If you do that, then you're probably creating some service issues down the road from that standpoint. So what we can actually do is actually treat the space with ions and actually treat the air. Unlike some other technologies that really don't, some may not treat the air, some treat it with a chemical. For example, some products put a chemical out in the air and it scrubs that air. Do those technologies work? Yeah, they work. They're not quite as efficient. They're typically more costly. And then there's additional maintenance down the road in the way of replacement of bulbs or replacement of components when they're needed. So that's kind of the quick overview of bipolar ionization and how it works. I know we're limited on time. I usually take about 20 to 30 minutes to go through something like this. But what I'd like to do is see if you have any questions that I can address that you may have. I'm sure you probably looked at bipolar ionization already. I know we had a meeting last week with Grant and someone from the facility side of the building there. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Do you work with any other schools or hospitals currently? In Oklahoma?
We do schools and hospitals all over the country. Right now we also have a portable line of equipment that we use in some applications, some up in the Northeast and some other areas where they don't really have air delivery systems. Or to be honest with you, they'll look at it from an optics standpoint. We have about 150,000 of those units out right now on bids. We've done school systems like Palm Desert in California. We've done some schools in Michigan. We were doing schools before the pandemic hit. We had schools that actually come to us to look at adding bipolar ionization to help increase attendance levels because we figured by having a healthier environment that they would actually have fewer cases of flu, other types of illnesses within schools. So we've been doing business with schools for longer than 18 months. I mean, we've been doing it for a multitude of years. We have case studies that show some of the stuff from some of the schools that we've done up in the New York area. We've done universities for quite some time, but we've done recently in the last 18 months. The number of schools we've done, I know Grant, his team have worked a couple schools in Oklahoma. I've done several schools myself in Texas, California. We've done some in Michigan. We've got schools all over the country, and then we have a sister company that's owned by our parent company called Novaris, and our portable units are all medical grade units. I mean, that's really all they did until the last 18 months was hospitals. So we've been to places like Johns Hopkins University. We've done places overseas with multiple hospitals. When the pandemic actually started back in January, well, actually more like December of 2019, but January, February timeframe of 2020, we actually sent units to a hospital in Wuhan, China, because of the pandemic that started, from that standpoint. Bipolarization, we've also, I did not touch on this, but I'm sure Grant has talked about it. We have a Spanish study that was an unsolicited study that actually also shows that our effectiveness on SARS-CoV-2 surrogate for COVID was 99% of airborne effectiveness within 10 minutes and 80% on surface within 20 minutes. So one of the things I always tell people, I don't care what kind of electronic air cleaning device you use, do your due diligence. Make sure the products are UL 867 and or UL 299A approved, which means that they produce no harmful byproducts that go out into the space, because there are some ion generators that will produce massive amounts of ozone. Ozone is a very good IAQ device, but it's not a good IAQ device if you have people in the building. Those products are typically used in wastewater treatment facilities and kind of an application where you don't have people typically. So do your due diligence. All of our products meet UL 867 as well as validated the UL 2998. The UL 2998 basically states that we're an ozone-free product. So it means it produces less than 5 parts per billion. You can have levels that high natural to the atmosphere, so there's no way to discern what's being produced by a device. So in UL 867 basically is the EPA levels for ozone production. That basically says that product will produce no more than what TV, computer, printer will produce in a building or office building. So all of our products meet UL 867, as well as they have all been validated for UL 2998, which means our products are ozone free.
Mike, what's the long-term maintenance costs for these products, or maintenance in general with them?
From an overall standpoint, depending on the equipment itself that you have, and depending on how much of it may be fan coil units or ductless mini splits or smaller type equipment. If it's a standard split system with a filter, there's virtually little to no maintenance with any of the units. If you have good filter changes and you do routine maintenance on your furnace, there is no additional maintenance. But if you have a fan coil unit, PTAC unit, something along those lines where you don't have real good filtration because these units are downstream of the filter, your biggest portion of the maintenance is when you go through every 6 to 12 months and do your maintenance, you shut the power off to the unit, you visually inspect the unit. If you see the carbon fiber brushes are dusty, you take a can of compressed air. Okay, I have right here sitting on my desk on my computer, squirt it a couple times, blow the dust off of it. That's all there is to it. I mean, it's a matter of a few seconds. If it's the Auto Clean 1500, and from what I understand, you're looking at both units because depending on the size of the equipment that's there, the Auto Clean 1500 is a self-cleaning unit. There is absolutely no maintenance, no replacement parts at all. But there is no replacement parts on any of these units. They all come with a 3-year warranty, and they also have a life expectancy of approximately 15 years.
Hey, Mike, you mentioned that you all had made presentations in Durant. Grant probably is your local here in Grant, in Oklahoma City, Grant, I would guess, or the area.
You're muted.
Grant, you're on mute.
Oh, yes, I'm around the Norman area.
Okay. So you had mentioned you all made a presentation in Durant. Are there any schools locally right now that have installed your product here in the Oklahoma City area that we may be able to?
Not Durant, but we did the Choctaw School District, and we did Shawnee. We've done those two just recently, and we're talking to a couple others that could be on the horizon. So.
Grant, can you speak to why your, I know we have to go through the bidding process, but you gave me kind of a quote, and it was considerably less than what we had from a competitor. Can you talk at all about why that is?
Yeah, so plasma air, so there's two main competitors in this industry are GPS, Global Plasma Solutions, and Plasma Air. GPS, typically what they're installing on all their AC units is the equivalent of our 1500 that we put on larger units. Well, it's with school districts, what we have is the 602 is roughly half the size as the equivalent for the 1500 or the GPS FC48 that they put on all of their units. So when you have smaller HVAC units that are less than 6 tons, you're able to put this ionizer on there that's half of the price or a third of the price than you would if you're using the equivalent GPS product. So I think that's where we're able to come in and make tremendous savings for school districts because we're offering a product that's equivalent and it's designed to ionize the required space, but at a fraction of the cost.
So that one that you're talking about doesn't have the self-cleaner though, correct?
The 602 does not have the self-cleaner, but it just takes the standard routine maintenance as Mike referenced. When you're I'm sure you guys are in the unit probably once or twice a year that you just kind of visually inspect it. It's just magnetized right at the air intake, and if it looks dirty, just squirt it with a little compressed air, and then you move on to the next one. But we feel like that, I mean, you could put self-cleanings on all of them, but I mean, then you're looking at a substantial cost increase. So a little maintenance versus is probably a little better than a huge upfront cost.
And if I could chime in here as well, there's also a difference in the self-cleaning mechanism that they use. On our product, our self-cleaning mechanism is what's referred to as a frictionless self-cleaning. We actually used a true needle point where they're using carbon fiber brushes on their FC48. Now we do use carbon fiber brushes on our 600 series. But one of the reasons we don't make that as a self-cleaner is because the only way to clean that is to use a mechanical device that will clean those brushes. What will happen over time is it will wear those carbon fiber brushes down, and you will need to replace and maintain those carbon fiber brushes at some point down the road. With the product that we look at with the 600 series, by not having it self-cleaning, we use a fraction of the power that GPS uses on their units. On average, their FC48 is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 watts. We're less than 1 watt. So one of the things that happens, the electromagnetic field that actually is generated from the emitters attract a lot less dust from our standpoint. So we can actually power up our unit, run longer, and still produce the same number of ions without dirt having very little impact. When we do our life cycle testing, we life cycle test for 15 years, and we actually do no maintenance at all on that system during the life cycle testing. And it basically is about 5 years before we start to see any decrease in ion production. And the average ion decrease that we have is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 10% after 5 years. And even at 5 years with 7 to 10% ion production, we are producing more ions out into the space that live longer than the standard ionizer, no matter who their competition is. So from that standpoint, with the fact that we do utilize less power because our unit physically is a little bit smaller, it's actually pretty substantially smaller. But there's mechanical reasons that our unit is physically able to be smaller and do what we do. But also with our units, you have to order specific voltages, and that's the reason it is that way. It keeps that power consumption low. It also keeps any opportunity for ozone production down, because the more you boost that internal power of the unit, the more likely you are to start producing ozone.
I know COVID's the hot topic right now, but I'm assuming this helps with other things like dust allergies and other things.
Exactly. It's good for pathogens, microorganisms. The way it basically works on viruses, I did kind of tell you how it works on particulate. It creates that clustering effect where it takes particulate, makes it larger. The way ionization actually works on viruses and bacteria is it attacks the protein where that causes the virus to be active. So what happens is that those ions will attach themselves to the virus, and that protein in that virus breaks that protein down, and the virus is no longer active. So some people say, well, do you kill the virus? We don't really kill the virus, we make the virus inactive. Unlike our portable technology that we use a lot, I even tell people it really doesn't kill the virus there. Our nanostrike technology basically obliterates the virus. I mean, it basically causes that virus to burst. So, but it also uses a plasma technology that is very similar to ion technology. There's just another avenue in that 5-step process with the nanostrike technology that it will cause a virus to burst. The only other technology on the globe that will do that to a virus is antibiotics. But the way we actually work with ionization is we basically break down the protein that makes that virus active. And once that protein is broken down, then that virus can no longer be considered. The virus itself will still be there, but it's inactive. And that's how it works on viruses. And Madrid, Spain did a study and the case study that they actually did was they replicated an ICU environment. It was in a hotel in Madrid that they were housing first responders and emergency workers into the hospital that was on the COVID wards. And so what they done was they done the testing in the room, and over about a 2-week period of time done multiple testing. But they were the ones, and that was an unsolicited case study that we didn't ask them to do it, we didn't hire them to do it, we didn't pay them to do it. They basically did it, sent us the results, and that was from the Department of Ministry from Madrid, Spain. That basically all the test results come back, and we were actually able to deactivate the virus by 99% on the airborne within 10 minutes, and then 80% of the surface virus within 20 minutes.
Anything else?
No.
All right, Mike, thank you guys. We'll,
You bet.
I'll be in touch, Grant.
If you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, guys.
I think I missed the cost. What was it?
Well, Drew's got the bid.
Oh, yeah.
We've got to, so I'm gonna have Grant look at our bid packet. We didn't ever send it out because that lawsuit, we found out about the lawsuit after we had created this bid pack. It's ready to go, but now I need to send it to this guy, this company, and see if if we're still talking about apples and apples. So we'll do all that, then we'll send it out to everybody. GPS is still going to bid. He made a good, my concern is them not being self-cleaning, but he made a good argument that with the lower amount of voltage, that it would attract less dust, and he was seeing only a 7 to 10% decrease in ionization after 5 years. We'll be in them before 5 years. We maintenance those things yearly. So if that all pans out to be true, I know the superintendent at Shawnee and Choctaw Well. I'll give them a call. I'll get Jennifer working on this, and we'll just bid it out and see what happens. And then I'll be bringing it back to you. But unless you guys
look stuff up.
Yeah, it'll give me some time to do some research, but we'll just let the bid process work itself out.
Sounds good. I'll look forward to
The vendor
hearing
is
about
called
that.
Virotech, but what's the actual technology called?
Plasma Air.
Plasma Air, yeah.
And do you know what the installation time? might
They're
be?
all up on the units, so they're not down in the
Oh, okay.
classrooms at all, so they just come out, put them on. I think I could be getting this wrong. It seems like it said 2 to 3 weeks it would take them to do the whole district.
Each room
We're gonna
has
do this
its
all
own
out at the
heat and air.
Or two.
sports complex.
I'm sorry, every 2 rooms
In
has
the
a.
middle school, it's every two.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
The
so
units, yeah.
we don't have one
Yeah.
huge thing for, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for bringing them in to do that. Let's move on to, does anybody have any other questions before we move on from that? All right, let's go. Item number 8, staff reports.
I want one of those cross-country shirts. It's red.
Yeah. You running up to get one, I gotta tell you. I agree. I'll find you one.
Can you find me one?
Yeah.
I love it.
I don't
I
know
don't
if
think
we've
I'm
done
worthy
that.
of it though. I'm not worthy of
I don't
it.
know that we've made those, but I've seen them at cross-country meets, and I thought to myself, that could
I
not be
think-
more true.
I think you deserve one.
Yeah.
That's the old school
It
stuff.
says, our punishment, or your punishment is our sport.
Remember they used to make you go run cross-country?
I couldn't have felt more like that as a baseball player.
Yeah, yeah. It looks good.
Well, thank you all for all
Yes.
that you do. I know it's already crazy. You're getting the need to do sometime soon. but Thank you for all that you do. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Principals? All right. Let's move on to item number 9. Discussion and possible action to approve or not to approve the following contracts and agreements for fiscal year '22. A, addendum with Oklahoma Building Services to add cleaning services for the indoor facilities and baseball, softball restrooms in the amount of $16.50 per month. B, applied behavior analysis services with Sierra Harrington in the amount of $75 per hour. C, volunteer coaching contract for Diana Ramos for softball and Timothy Peters for middle school football. D, Melody Duty physical therapist in the amount of $65 per hour. E, United Systems fiber cabling and installation quote in the amount of $4,657.82.
Only question I had on the addendum for janitorial services, it states a gym located at 50th and Rockwell. Is that, what is that? Is it supposed to
Oh,
be?
they got that wrong.
50th and Council Athletic Facility?
Yeah, our 50th and Stinchcomb.
That's what they're talking about, but they probably just didn't know the address up there.
And is that I know we approved on the POs tonight, they had a PO on there for additional services. Was it for this?
Same thing.
It's a different amount that I think.
Oh, it's their
only
annual, it's their
17,000.
monthly, it's their monthly fee plus that.
This is the monthly, and that PO should have been for the whole
We
year.
had done a blanket, and I think the increase was what I thought.
You thought the 17 that we initially That was on there tonight.
I thought we did an initial with our, the first huge, all those big old blankets, which Jennifer's not here, so
We do have a blanket for the school, like
cleaning
here,
part, that we're
yes.
adding,
The
But
1650.
to add,
but it's not, we always bump up.
Is I guess the PO that I saw tonight, is that just a monthly PO for them?
Trying to find it.
1650, because
No, it was
should have been a lot more.
It was the whole amount.
yes, normally we would do the
It
whole
was
rest of the
$297,
year plus a little buffer.
$17,642.10.
That was the extra 1650 times however many months.
Plus a buffer
Probably.
for
A buffer.
anything
Yeah.
is what we usually do. Is what, she's not here to answer it, so I don't know for sure, but.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I do recall that we had a blanket for them.
I think that's a wise purchase, or that's a wise.
Oh, yeah.
Money well spent.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, we don't have
not
anybody
been-
else to do it, so
How is it?
And we can't rely on the students.
Right.
Sorry, we can't rely on the students.
How, have the coaches been cleaning that up?
now we had, Adam's dad was doing it, and we had another person out there part-time.
Yeah, they were white.
Yeah.
And anyway, discretion's a better part of valor, right? He just said.
That's
"No,
right, yeah.
thanks."
He said, I'm finally retired.
So,
so Kit, to answer your question, the difference, that 17 is for the remainder of our physical year to
Okay.
add the facility.
Okay,
Yes.
there we go. The contract, yeah.
Thank you, Cassie.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So with United Citizens, was this just, I know we proved quite a bit with them last month. Was this just addition due to the corridor or what?
Well, whenever we put this, this west connector on here, there is a piece that goes from the high school to the middle school that goes to our main line, and we had that piece together a couple of different times, and now we're making that permanent. Adam, actually, you could speak to that better than I could.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. So they're having to do a new pathway, basically.
Okay.
So it's all the way from this switch in the library to the main switch down the admin. So that's just why it's cost so much, because it's a lot of cabling to do. So, but that'll finally, be a stable connection and make sure we get all the internet service that we're paying for all the way up to the high school here. So, and I believe that'll come out of bond. I think that's a bond.
Yes, we're
bond funds.
paying for that bond.
Move approval item 9.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Jaggers,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Pettit,
Yes.
Wallstaff.
Yes.
Item 10, discussion and possible action to approve or not to approve the change order number 1 with Lido Construction for middle school gas line replacement in the amount of $10,444.
So we've had a few things here and there that we've had to change, but we've been able to do that with their contingency money. And we have enough money in that contingency money that, we set aside a certain percent. And we have enough to do that, but that is not Lingo's recommendation. He said, let's go ahead and do a change order on this because he foresees a few more little things that'll be easier to do than one than use up all of our contingency and then come back to the board for every little thing. And when we use the contingency money, we can do it immediately. We don't have to have board approval. We just go in and he does it. He doesn't even tell me. He tells me at the bi-weekly board meeting. So this is the first change order we've done on this entire project, which is amazing. And what's going on is we have to change out, because of putting on that new roof, we have to change out the gas lines on all of those units up there. And he said they're in terrible shape anyway, so it's just better to just do them. I just told him to do them all at once. So we are. So that's what we're voting on and why.
Move approval of item 10.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Jaggers,
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Palmer.
Yes.
Pettit,
Yes.
Wallstaff.
Yes.
Item number 11, discussion and possible action to approve or not to approve the district to pay for the hepatitis vaccine for employees who have been determined to be high risk, such as nurses, coaches, bus drivers, etc.
It's our normal thing.
Yep, move approval item 11.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Jaggers.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Palmer.
Yes.
Pettit. Wallstad.
Yes.
Item 12, discussion, possible action to approve or not to approve credit in math and science for 11th and 12th grade students for math and science courses offered at Canadian Valley Technology Center as presented in the program syllabi.
Same thing, we do it every year. This is how we allow our kids that go out there in junior and senior year to get credit. That we give them credit is by you guys approving this syllabi. So it's just standard fare.
And they go through the process, Canadian Valley does, to make sure that their courses they're offering meets the state requirements.
Yeah, I saw those that all had the state.
Landon did the welding program like 2 years ago, and he said the math teacher was amazing. Like, it's good. Yeah.
Move approval of item 12.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Jaggers.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Palmer.
Yes.
Pettit.
Yes.
Wallstad.
Yes.
Item 13, discussion and possible action to approve or not to approve the following people for the District Gifted and Talented Committee for fiscal year '22. High school, Mark Melton, Jackie Melton, Lisa Tackett, Lacey Powell. Middle school, Trey Keppel, Tracy Williford, Jordan Wisniewski, Darcy Gillespie, Katie Griner. Elementary, Ruben Bellows, Karma Hance, Andrea Stewart, Kelly Bernhardt, Christy Morris, Danielle Cloud. District, Matthew Flinton, Penny Brenniger, Edie Daniel, Brent Eskridge, Adam Forrester.
I think this is great. What I really like about it is I see a number of names on here that I see them as part of the gifted and talented group, and I'm thankful that they're going to be used within our community. And so with that, I approve item 13, or I move approval of item 13.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Jaggers.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Palmer.
Yes.
Pettit.
Yes.
Wallstad.
Yes.
Item 14, discussion and possible action to approve or not to approve the following approval request from the Oklahoma State Department of Education to use a nationally recognized high school academic assessment in place of the statewide academic assessment, SAT, for grade 11 college and career readiness assessment state testing.
We're going to use ACT, and the state recommends SAT.
So is that, I was going to ask about that, is that something new that has come down from the state? Before they allowed you to go either way, right, Mark? I mean, you could do...
I think it's up in the 90 percentile of the schools that use the ACT over the SAT. I mean, so I don't know, exactly when that was that it came down when they gave a choice like that, but overwhelmingly, most schools use the ACT.
I guess that's what I thought Oklahoma did. I'm surprised that they.
Yeah, that's why I was just like,
I'm confused on that.
I didn't understand that, especially the way it's worded. That, I just didn't.
That SAT is statewide academic assessment, right? That's not
The SAT.
Right.
No, it is the SAT.
Yeah.
It is
So the state one that
the state wanted us one. Last year is the first year I can remember. Last year and this year, they're setting that as the what you're supposed to use for 11th graders, unless the board, this local board, votes to use something else. Well, we take Mark's recommendation and Jackie's. No,
had us all pick one or the other.
That's the way I thought it used to be. You got to select. I mean, it still is. I guess you can select which one.
Yeah.
So we need to.
You have to do that every year.
So if you don't pick, then they're going to have you doing the SAT.
Right.
So we need to amend that to make sure.
But as freshmen, we do the PSAT though.
That's right. We do the PSAT, and then the junior year, that state test that all juniors take is the ACT.
And don't we do
I don't know why they.
Because
most of them colleges
in the middle
take
school, what's
ACT,
the
not
thing that
SAT.
we all take?
We do state testing, but then we have the ICAP is the career readiness. I don't know.
Okay.
You were maybe thinking of the PSAT or whatever that.
That's what I was thinking, but I thought we did it.
A preliminary
in school,
SAT.
but we do it as a freshman. Okay.
I move approval of item 14.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Jaggers.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Palmer.
Yes.
Pettit.
Yes.
Wallstaff.
Yes.
Do we need to have ACT in
I think
our
we do.
motion?
That's the problem. We need to amend that motion.
Yeah, I think we do.
We should designate the ACT as
That we are
the,
designating the ACT
The
as our
ACT.
test in place.
as our test.
Okay. I guess I was just looking at what Mark has stated on here, that we're going to select the ACT.
Yeah, just
Okay.
putting in the motion.
Okay, I make a motion, on item 14 that Bethany Public Schools uses the ACT as their summative assessment.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Jaggers.
Yes.
Miller.
Yes.
Palmer.
Yes.
Pettit.
Yes.
Wallstaff.
Yes.
All right, item 15, discussion and possible action to approve or not to approve the middle school and high school student handbook revisions for fiscal year '22.
So is this the highlighted and the red?
So, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, it's just to take out
Attendance
attendance
and
as an
exemptions.
issue.
And then awards on ours. Awards and exemptions.
So the highlighted is the high school,
The
right?
highlighted, I believe, is the middle school. The underlined red is the high school.
Okay. Thanks.
It's just the change on the attendance part with the exemption.
Switch it to assignments versus attendance.
Right.
Move approval.
So,
item-
can I-
sorry.
quick question, just some quick questions, and I'd like maybe some discussion if possible. I know you guys have worked hard with the whole exemption process. I mean, it's my understanding that the exemption process was put in place back in the day to really drive the state report card on attendance. That's my recollection of why that was put in place. And then I know last year with COVID, Mark, I remember you talking with us, part of the concern was getting students to turn their work in, right? So that's why we kind of made that adjustment last year. So as we look at exemptions, knowing that attendance really is not the big deal anymore, is the exemption process, what are the pros and cons of the exemption process? I know that at the middle school, it becomes a pretty hectic week, that last week, where we are planning field trips, we're planning, we're tracking all of that. There's always our kids here, there's just, it seems like a lot. Then at the high school, I think of our kids that choose to go post-secondary, that aren't used to taking some of the tests because they've been exempt since they were freshmen in high school from taking those tests. So I'm just kind of curious, what are the pros and the cons? What are some, as we look at the exemption process, is it time to maybe say goodbye to the exemption process and let's pick up those extra day of classroom instruction and let's provide the students with the summative test? Thoughts?
The kids are gonna hate you, Kent. That's-
Well, I mean, that's...
That,
It
no,
does provide motivation. I think there are kids that achieve due to that reward. Sometimes it's not a parent-driven thing, it's a kid-driven thing.
Mhm.
I want to be exempt. I know there's a reward at the end of the semester or end of the year, to where whatever that reward is, whether it's our trips or this past year was just not having to come. I feel like that's a big motivation on kids to achieve, where sometimes they are not self-driven other than that reward system. So I don't know long-term what would happen if we did that, but I do have a lot of kids who work hard, and those last couple weeks are maybe evidence of that they go, oh, I do want like that policy, but I got to get everything in, and we deal with that, because if I can get a kid to do an extra assignment and maybe understand something better, then that would be worth the policy, is in my head. So again, trying to get that work turned in, and then to do that is why the adjustment was what we talked about.
And they all still have to take the 9-week test to get a summative in there. Granted, it's not the whole year.
Right, it's a
halfway point, but it is working on
That's true.
something more than just the last chapter. So I think that was the thought, is that you would catch them.
You get
at least some of it,
it.
they're going to get that. I see your point too, though. Some of your college classes, it's a waste of the freshman year, but it is in a lot of other stuff too.
But I also think even at the college level, you know, having two that are there, they're starting to fall in this category of you can drop your lowest test grade if there's 5 tests. You know, you're starting to see some of that even at the college level. Have you guys experienced that with your kids?
Oh,
yeah. But you know, I think it's a balance between consequences with, you know, rules and things that we have in the handbook, and then incentives and motivation. It's a delicate balance for, you know, those kids to just be motivated to stay on top of things.
Drew, you know, you and I talked a little bit about it, and one thing you said to me is that's something you would want some input from the teachers. So I was just curious what you heard from the teachers when you.
I haven't talked to the teachers. I was just waiting to. The first thing I want is from these two guys.
Okay.
And then they would get the input from the teachers if they decide. But guys, I think this is a discussion. Speak freely if that's something you feel okay about exploring. If you don't, then speak your mind, because these guys want to hear it. You guys are the subject area experts in this particular area, so
right.
Say what you want
I
to
mean,
say.
in my experience, and not just at Bethany, I mean, exemptions provide big incentive. You know, I see that, and you know, it's semester. You know, so. You know, just whether you're dealing with consequences or kids that find themselves in a bad situation, if you take away that hope, there's nowhere to go. So that's what provides that hope throughout that semester, to where maybe you get that kid. Maybe we're not talking about the A kid. Maybe we're talking about the C kid that might normally be a D kid. You know, that's where a lot of that motivation and incentive, I think, can come to light.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes when they get that opportunity in the first semester and achieve that, then they go, I kind of like the last 2 days of school, as opposed to, because they don't look at it always as a reward either. So they look at it as consequence, even with the attendance piece. Well, I didn't make it, so now I have to take the test. Where we meant it to be a reward the whole time. And so getting students to understand that and to try and give them incentive-based stuff instead of always consequences too, is something that I think is important.
I understand what you're
We've
saying, Ken.
We've had exemptions since I've been here, when I went to school here, by the way. And so I think that's an interesting thing. Are we just doing it to keep doing it? I get that. But I do see as a principal sometimes those conversations between kids and teachers going, I got to get my grade up because this is important to me. And I think that, again, if they're motivated to get their grade up, then they're learning more.
I do like the assignment based better, because I have had the argument since middle school. Never had it with the older ones, but the youngest one is, hey, I've got 3 days left.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, no. Yeah, mom and dad exemption.
That's right.
Guys, don't you feel like you want to have some conversation with your teachers about pluses and minuses of this?
Certainly, yeah, we can.
I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea. I think it's always good to look at our practices and see if what we've been doing is just because we've always been doing it. So, but I also believe strongly that the people closest to the problem are the ones best equipped to solve the problem. So I would like to have you guys go out at your next faculty meeting, talk about this, maybe do a survey, however you want to get that feedback. But you know, we're looking at it from a board perspective, and then we're looking at it as an administrator perspective. But I'd be interested to hear what it's like from a teacher perspective. They may have a different perspective. And you know, Les brought up the assignments. No, the assignments being, yeah. I liked that. I thought it was motivational. So when you're talking to them, you say, what else? Are there things we want to replace that with? Do we want to just do away with it? You know, Because ultimately, what you're gonna do is put something together and bring back to this group, and they're gonna say, yeah, we like that, or no, we don't like that, or whatever.
You know, in any other normal year, you know, I'll tell you, like, attendance is a big part of it, aside from school report card. You know, I'll tell you, if we can get our kids here to work with those teachers out there, they're gonna make it. That's the truth. I got so much faith in what those teachers do, and if we can incentivize kids to come in a normal year where we count on attendance, that's all it takes. You know, obviously we've had to mix up the recipe. Now the key where, you know, you're gonna be gone a lot, it's just staying engaged and getting that work turned in, which I think is the next best thing. You know, we haven't been able to find a lot of perfect solutions through the last 2.5 years, but we've sometimes had to work with the best we can with what we got, where we're at. And that's kind of where we went on that deal. But that gives our kids the best chance to work with those people in those halls, and that's all they need.
And we did have teacher input on that, on the assignment base. I met with a group of teachers, then Mark and I met with a group of high school teachers as well to make this year's policy. So they had input in it.
Always good to look good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea.
So we still need you to decide on this year.
Approval item 50.
Second.
We need a second.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said you said
No, we
second.
need a
Oh.
second.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Jaggers,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Pettit,
Yes.
Wolfback.
Yes.
Item 16, discussion and possible action to approve or not to approve the personnel handbook for fiscal year '22.
So Dee puts this together for us every year. She just put in policies that you've already approved. So there's a big couple, 2 to 3 pages of red, but those are all policies you've already approved and are in the board policy manual. There are a couple of little things like the $500 stipend. For whatever reason, Jennifer caught the fact that it was not in the handbook, so we thought it'd be a good thing to have in there. So that's not something that you guys have already approved that, when you approved the negotiations. Right. So there's nothing surprising in that. I don't know, I doubt you read the whole thing, but that's what that is.
And this social media usage, is this just a
We
common?
did a new policy.
Okay.
And so that's just incorporating in it. Some new state law stuff.
New law, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Move approval item 16.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Jaggers,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Pettit,
Yes.
Wolfback.
Yes. Just a point of clarification, what does ACT organization stand for?
American Classroom Teachers, right? Or Association.
Association of Classroom Teachers.
Thank you.
All right, item number 17, discussion and possible action to approve or not to approve the following out-of-town, out-of-state overnight trips with expenses to be paid from corresponding activity funds. A, Paul Baker and high school speech and debate students to attend Texas Thespian Festival at Gaylord Texan in Grapevine, Texas, November 18th through 21st, 2021. B, football coaching staff to attend 1 or 2 of the 3 following coaches clinics. Number 1, DFW Coaches Clinic in Grapevine, Texas, January 28th through 30th, 2022. Number 2, Glacier Clinic in Irving, Texas, or Kansas City, Missouri, February 4th through 6th, 2022. Or in St. Louis, Missouri, February 25th through 27th, 2021. Number 3, Red River Coaches Clinic in Durant, Oklahoma, February 26th through 28th, 2021. B, high school track and field to attend. Number 1, Wichita State Shocker Pre-State Challenge, Wichita, Kansas, either April 7th through 8th or April 15th through 16th, 2022. Number 2, OSSAA 4A State Track Championships to be announced May 6th through 7th, 2022. C, middle school choir to go to Six Flags in Dallas, Texas, May 7th, 2022. D, Lisa Tackett and senior class to attend senior trip in Branson, Missouri on May 15th through 16th, 2022.
My only point or comment to make in regards to overnight trips is just making sure that we do have appropriate ratios of approved adults to students, just making sure that we have those in all cases where kids are on the road with adults, please.
I feel confident that we do right, guys? Yes, yes, yes. Okay.
And
Thank you.
yeah, we need to amend that. Looks like the dates are wrong on
Yes, I was about to
those.
say that.
Yeah, on 2 and 3,
21.
should have been 2022. February 25th, 27th, 2022.
Oh, February 26th, 2020. Yes.
Move approval item 17, amending item 2 to read 2022 and item 3 to read 2022.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Jaggers,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Pettit, Wallstead.
Yes. Hey, one thing back on the revisions, you've still got Wintroth on here as a principal, just
On the,
What page is that?
There you go.
on page 161.
The handbook?
Yes.
there you go. Oh, Jennifer, as soon as she leaves, close it.
Oh, we got rid of that cat right at the back.
Well, I saw him on here earlier, I thought, well, maybe he's back.
I was just hoping he'd take a phone call or two.
I've been.
Yeah.
We're gonna stay here. Would you No new business.
Do we have any board member comments? Drew?
As you might guess, I get my fair share of emails. I received many emails last year as well. There is a significant difference in the vast majority of the emails I've received this year as compared to last. The difference is tone. I've sent out a number of emails over the summer and the early fall asking for everyone to remain respectful, civil, and polite. With rare exception, everyone has done as I've asked. We have great kids in Bethany. They come from great families because of great parents. Not all of our parents agree with the protocols and procedures that are best for schools, with what is best for schools. That doesn't make one parent bad and the other good. It just makes them have a different opinion. That just means that both parents are great parents who have different opinions. So tonight I want to say thank you. Thank you to the parents for remaining respectful and civil in your communication. It is easy to say things you wouldn't normally say when you're emotional. Thanks for understanding for everything we do. It's not in our control. Thanks for raising such great kids and sharing them with us for 7 hours a day. Thank you to the board for giving your time and to making difficult decisions. We know full well that many of these decisions are not going to make everyone happy. Thanks to the administrators for their long hours of work, listening, explaining, but never complaining. Thanks to our teachers. Without you, we cannot have a great school district that we have. Great school districts are built on hiring, retaining, and training great people. Our teachers show up every day with a smile on their face, they roll up their sleeves, and they get to work. Thanks to our support staff. Without you, none of this happens. Schools cannot function without a support staff. We have an amazing support staff that do what they do because they love kids, not because they're here for the money or the glory. And last but not least, I want to thank our kids. They follow parents' rules, school rules, teacher rules, coach rules, social rules, and COVID rules. All of that can be stressful. We heard some of that tonight. But they come to school with great attitudes and they work hard every day. I love Bethany Public Schools. I love the people that I work with. I am blessed beyond measure to work with such a talented and caring group of people. Thank you all for, it is all of us that make Bethany Public Schools the place where people want to send their kids. That's my report.
All right, thank you. Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Roll call.
Jackers?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Palmer?
Yes.
Pettit?
Yes.
Wallstead?
Yes.